So when the rubber hit the road, the Russians weren't really interested in a ceasefire agreement, and this is reflected in Russian propaganda. Hello, my friends. My name is Darren Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to provide context in the war in Ukraine. I do videos fairly regularly. I do a daily brief in the morning and then 3 big stories in the evening. And then sometimes I also do, videos like this, where I'm looking at Russian propaganda and I'm saying, okay, well, why are they saying what they're saying? So we're going to see where Solyov is responding. He's a Russian propagandist, is responding to Russia's ceasefire proposal. Before we do that, let's look at past headlines over the past few weeks. Okay, so this is 3 weeks ago. Vladimir Solyov tells Europeans that they should disappear. Charming. Vladimir Solyov says Trump's info comes from Putin. Russian state TV discusses Trump's plans for Ukraine and Europe. Vladimir Solyov says Trump administration sounds exactly like his show. Margarita Simonyan talks about Zelensky's meeting with Trump in Vance. They had a good time with that. And there was another one thanking Trump for his policies. State TV pundits can't believe Russia's luck. Sekaviva that says Trump is boosting the Russian economy. Solyov says Trump is Russia's ally. Another says Trump is keeping his promises. Solyov says Russia should take the Baltics, Armenia, and Central Asia. They're feeling really empowered. And here's another one. Sakabiva praises Trump's tactics. Okay, but then we get to this video here, this most recent, after the peace proposal has gone forward. Now, what are they saying the same thing with the peace proposal, or are they saying something else? Well, here's what we're seeing. So special thanks to the Russian Media Monitor for putting this out, and I'm going to read, and we're just going to see what they're actually saying. So here we are. If Trump tells us to stop immediately, do you think that, just like the slur for Ukrainians, we will immediately lie down and spread our legs? Okay, so that's a charming metaphor that he's using here. And he's essentially coming at this in a fairly combative kind of way, which is not what you were seeing before the ceasefire proposal was brought to Russia. That's really interesting. He answers himself, no. We have some people that still can't understand this. They still have an internal belief that we're close to ending this and we should do it. Okay, so they still believe that we're close to ending and we should do it. We're not saying that. So I don't think Russia's anywhere close to, now again, he's not Putin, he's not the mouthpiece necessarily, but it's interesting how the shift has shifted, or the propaganda has shifted in a significant way, where they were saying this 3 weeks ago and for the last 3 weeks, and now they're saying this. Okay, no, guys, it won't happen this way, he says. Regardless of any agreements between the Ukro-Nazis and Americans. Okay, and it's not a charming way of saying this, but he's not really interested in whatever it is that Trump is selling here, and that's kind of interesting. We've seen many different Americans that had different demands and different concepts. What has changed just because the representatives of the two countries with whom we aren't close. So it's interesting that he's talking about how they are not close with either the United States and obviously they're not close with the Ukrainians. But just a week or so ago, Trump could do no wrong on Russian state media. He was walking on water. Something happened. Something changed. Who have no relation to us, have met in distant countries and agreed to something. What were they saying? How were they saying it? They discussed something for 9 hours. What was publicly disclosed to us? Okay, so it's kind of like minimizing what the peace accord or peace deal is. I'm sure they thought about it and worked it out and tried to figure out things for more than 9 hours, but he's minimizing here. What was publicly disclosed to us is absolutely untethered from reality. Completely untethered. All of it is totally meaningless. Okay, so he's pushing back against this. And again, remember, this is Russian state media, so it's the position of the state is being pushed forward, generally speaking, maybe with some nuance here. But yeah, I mean, they don't want to settle anytime soon. All of this is simply meaningless. Okay, so Rubio and Waltz stepped out and stated something. After that, Trump also said something. I'm curious, did they spend 9 hours on this? Okay, another way to go back and minimize. Now, here's Rubio talking. The best goodwill gesture the Russians can provide is to say yes to the offer that the Ukrainians have made to stop the shooting. Obviously, as a part of the negotiation, as we're talking about how to end this conflict, there will be a lot of issues to unravel. This is Rubio again talking, and I'm just reading what he's saying here because there's like, yes, it's in English, but there's also a Russian voiceover. Not the least of which is the humanitarian concerns, the children, the prisoners of war, all the things that sadly come with these conflicts. And so you can't see this if you're listening on Spotify, but Solioff is like rubbing his eyes and like, really, what are you talking about with this? But the number one goodwill gesture we could see from the Russians is to see the Ukrainian offer and reciprocate it with a yes. No, Solioff says, no, we won't reciprocate an agreement. Having wiped off the ash cross off his forehead. Let's stop there for a second. So no, the answer is no. He's not going to go along with the agreement. But what's this wipe the ash cross off his forehead? So it was Ash Wednesday. Rubio is Catholic, so he had the cross on his forehead. This is a thing for Lent. But why even mention that? Like, how does that relate to anything else here unless you're just trying to somehow minimize him? Rubio is repeating false narratives. Well, that's interesting coming from Solioff, that have been imposed by false Western propaganda. What stolen kids are to be returned and from where? Okay, so that's really interesting that he's denying that when we know of about 20,000 children that have been taken forcibly from Ukraine, and there's potentially upwards of 100 or more thousand, maybe upwards of 200,000 that are taken by Russia or behind Russian held areas that are not there of their own free will. And so, and only about 1,200 have returned or something close to that number so far. So yeah, like to say what stolen kids are to be returned and from where is just ridiculous. Every phrase stated by Rubio is a bitter legacy of him sitting in the Senate or in Congress, wherever he was sitting for a long time. It was the U.S. Senate. This was little Rubio. Okay, he got that wrong. He's trying to minimize Rubio and call him little Marco. This was Trump minimizing Rubio and calling him little Marco, and that's where this comes from.
Little Marco.
Okay, that's what he's talking about. This was during the first Trump campaign where he's calling him little Marco in a way to minimize him. Okay, so continuing here, and not the head of Trump's State Department, and that's Rubio. No, for us, all of this is insignificant. Now we see a clip of Trump's press secretary speaking, saying he knows the art of the deal, meaning Trump. He is the negotiator in chief. And he put President Zelensky in his place. This is not at all what the Ukrainian delegation is saying, says Solioff. So he's saying, hey, the Ukraine delegation isn't saying that he put him in his place. Americans are saying that they have bent Zelensky. Comrades who are not comrades. Now, he also had a slur for Ukrainians. Let me explain it simply with a gesture. And then he gives a rude gesture. Here you go all the way in. And if you want to know what Solioff thinks, if you want to know what the Russians think about the potential peace deal, this is where it is. And you can't capture, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, this is it very easily. Okay, so they're not on board. Is our answer clear to you? The Red Army is carrying out the tasks set by the Supreme Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Federation. Victory will be ours. The enemy will be destroyed. So with that, he's pretty satisfied, and that he doesn't need, or that the Russians do not need to enter into a ceasefire or a peace deal. They will be destroyed and expelled from our land. He goes on to say, if all of NATO's forces decide to test our resolve, I will remind them of the statement of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief on February 24th, 2022. We will respond in a way that you can't even imagine. And that's how he's going to conclude this. Okay, now, if that was true, and when it's really not, here's NATO's strength. I just looked this up. Russia from NATO. This is just a meme, so take it with a grain of salt, but it's probably not too far. Russia's potential military power is 1,339,000. And again, this could be an older, I saw this is February 13th, 2025, so it's not too old, only about a month old, but Okay, about 1.3, 1.4 million, as opposed to 5.8 million total military personnel. The number of tanks is surprisingly close, 12,566 to 12,408, and that's after all the warfare over the last 3 years. They had a lot of tanks. Armored fighting vehicles, however, is only 51,000 to a million armored fighting vehicles, and a total Navy of 598 to 2,151. Aircraft carriers 1 to 16, and total aircraft is 4,000 and change to 20,000. There's no contest, except they're going to say, well, we have nuclear weapons and we're just going to destroy all your cities, not realizing that that would mean destruction for them as well. Okay, tell me what you think about what you saw here. I think it's interesting that a week ago they were singing Trump's praises, and now that tune has certainly changed. Okay, put that in the comments below. Thank you for the time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.